So this poem, as I said, is about racism all across our country, and it's a sonnet. It begins with an epigraph from Dr. King. All y'all really from Alabama. The straitjackets of race prejudice and discrimination do not wear only Southern labels. The subtle psychological technique of the North has approached in its ugliness and victimization of the Negro the outright terror and open brutality of the South. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Why We Can't Wait. This here, the cradle of this here nation. Everywhere you look, roots run right back south. Every vein filled with red dirt, blood, cotton. We the dirty word you spit out your mouth. Mason-Dixon is an imagined line. You can theorize it or wish it real, but it's the same old ghost, see-through, benign. All y'all from Alabama. We the wheel turning cotton to make the nation move. We the scapegoat in a land built from death. No longitude or latitude disproves the truth of Founding Fathers' sacred oath. We hold these truths like dark snuff in our jaw. Black oppression's not happenstance, it's law. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Ashley. So wonderful, and such a wonderful way to start off this event. So again, I want to welcome everyone because I saw a couple of people were coming in right as we started. This is Spoken Word at AEIVA. It is a hybrid event. And then if this is your first time joining us in person or online, AEIVA is the Abrams Eagle Institute for the Visual Arts. We are the art museum for the University of Alabama at Birmingham. We present 8 to 10 exhibitions per year, highlighting a mix of regionally, nationally, and internationally acclaimed artists. And tonight's event is being presented in conjunction with our fall exhibition, Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration. So Marking Time is curated by Nicole R. Fleetwood, the James Weldon Johnson Professor of Media, Culture, and Communication at New York University, and reflects her decade-long commitment to research and programming on the visual art and culture of mass incarceration. We are thankful to her and her entire National Marking Time team for working with us on bringing this exhibition to Birmingham. Major support for Marking Time is provided by the Art for Justice Fund, a sponsored project of Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, New York University Steinhardt School of Culture, Education and Human Development, and the Alabama State Council for the Arts. So tonight's event is just one of a few public events that has been happening this semester with the exhibition at AEIVA. If this is your first one and you're inspired and you want to come back for more, we do have 2 more events here, and that is another hybrid event, a reading of men's training, which will happen on November 29th. Signups for that can be found on our website for either in person or on Zoom. And then our closing reception will be completely virtual as well, and that will be on December 7th. And for those of you on Zoom, or for those of you that want to come back here in person to see the exhibition, you are welcome to do so. We are open Tuesday through Saturday, 12 to 5. We do ask you book your appointment ahead of time, which you can do by going to our website and clicking on visit and then booking your ticket. It is a free ticket. We just have to have time ticketing right now. So tonight's spoken word event is an event that we have every semester in conjunction with the Department of English and their creative writing classes taught by Adam Vines. While Adam will go a little bit more in depth into this here in a minute, I just wanted to give us a general overview of tonight's event. So each semester, Adam's students visit the AEIVA galleries and choose an artwork on display that inspires them. They create, as part of the class assignment, a poem or piece of spoken word. Each of these readings you are about to see and hear are accompanied by the image of the artwork in the exhibition that inspired them. This semester, however, we're going a little differently, and we have partnered with the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute as well as the Jefferson County Memorial Project, And we will have readers interspersed throughout all of our Department of English student readers that are alumni of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Youth Legacy Program, and they will be reading selections from the Liberated Voices blog hosted by the Jefferson County Memorial Project. These readings will be accompanied by images of artwork and exhibitions located inside the exhibitions of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. So the images are from 2 different locations throughout the event. And I will remind you guys of this in just a little bit. However, now, to learn more about each of these entities, I'm going to turn it over first to Joy Brown, who's here from the Jefferson County Memorial Project, and as well on Zoom with Michelle Craig.
Thank you, Christina. We are so excited to be in partnership with AEIVA for the Marking Time exhibition. It has helped amplify our own mission at JCMP and the work of those on our Liberated Voices blog so much. So we are extremely grateful for that partnership. A little bit about the Jefferson County Memorial Project. We are a grassroots coalition composed of more than 40 community partners, just like AEIVA and the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, and a multiracial, multi-faith, multi-sector, and multi-generational group of committed volunteers. Together, we work together to complete 4 goals: researching Jefferson County's documented victims of racial terror lynchings, educating the public on the importance of this history, placing historical markers at lynching sites, and retrieving our monument from the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery. And last but definitely not least, advocating where racial injustice still exists today. Part of that advocacy work is our work that we do with Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer. We work together with men that are incarcerated at Donaldson to amplify their voices through our Liberated Voices blog. The blog features original poetry and artwork from the men incarcerated there. And many of these men are working towards parole and probation. So in order to not adversely affect that process, we've been advised to withhold the names of the authors and the artists. The anonymity reminds us of how these systems continue to strip these men of their civil and human rights. And so once again, I would like to thank Christina and AEIVA and also the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute for being both amazing community partners. And I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle Craig. I am the Youth Development Specialist for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, and we are absolutely elated to be a part of this program. The Legacy of Leadership program is a program that's designed to teach high school students how to be docents, which is a fancy word for tour guides. And so they go through some trainings to learn about civil and human rights, especially using the story of Birmingham in the civil rights movement and how that movement helped change the world. So the voices that you're going to hear today from those students are kind of a mixture of some of our alumni from more than 10 years ago and some of our alumni that are current. But we are absolutely excited to be partnering with Jefferson County Memorial Project as well as AEIVA on this particular project. Our young people, when they heard about them being able to use their talents to highlight the voices, to amplify the voices of those men, they were excited as well. So again, thank you guys for allowing us to be a part of your programming, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy and Michelle. Now we're going to hear from Adam Vines, who is the professor of creative writing. And I meant to write down your full title. I apologize. I did not do that. So tell us your full title when you get up here. He is our professor of creative writing in the Department of English here at UAB.
Thanks, Christina. I'm Director of Creative Writing in the English Department and a professor. And I wanted to thank Christina and John for putting this on again. I think this is the 4th partnership we've had, maybe the 5th. And Christina, 2 Monday nights, she stayed from 5 till 7:30 while we wandered through the gallery and talked about the paintings and drafted and then revised, came back and revised and read our revisions in front of the paintings. And I can't thank her enough for allowing us that opportunity of being able to witness the artwork live and write about it and then revise it. Well, tonight I'm going to introduce you to students from my EH 305 class, which is a beginning poetry workshop. These students have been through multiple revisions. I wish you could see all of them right now. They would be shaking their heads. And a couple of weeks ago, we were working late nights. I was getting emails back and forth and setting up Zoom meetings with them. And I'm just so proud of the work that they've done. Some of these students probably never written a poem for the public, and they had to learn how to write a poem for the public instead of just for themselves. But anyway, I'm thrilled to have them show you what they've done. They are writing Ecrastic Poems, which is a type of poem that's written about visual artwork. It's a fancy Greek term. Ekphrasis is ek meaning out, phrasis, phrase, or speech. So they're recreating the artwork out of language. One of our earliest examples is Homer's Iliad, where Homer is describing the interior of Achilles' shield for about 40 lines, all the human pursuit and wars and human dynamics that were going on at the time. Since then, we've had tens of thousands of Ecrastic poems that have been written, and I've always been attracted to them. And again, there's nothing better than having a museum on campus where they can come and see an exhibit like this that was just at MoMA. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I spent 4 hours looking at it, and I could come back, no, 6 hours, because I came with my wife that afternoon. And I'm going to come back a couple of more times, and I would suggest everyone on Zoom needs to set up an appointment and see this exhibit. It's powerful, it's moving, it's experience, it's art as living experience. I think that's pretty much it. And now we'll get to hear some poems.
Yes, okay, so what's about to happen is I'm going to play the poems. As a reminder, the artwork that we're going to see 2 Department of English students first, and then we will have one of the BCRI students reading the JCMP poem, and then we'll go to another 2 students, and then BCRI, JCMP, and so on and so forth until we get to the end. The English students will have the artwork that inspired their poems, accompanied with their reading, and then again the JCMP readings will be accompanied by the BCRI, the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute exhibitions. This is because, again, the authors of these poems are anonymous, so we didn't want to accidentally make an accidental correlation between a artwork in the exhibition and the reading. We didn't want anyone to accidentally assume that one created the other. So we wanted to make sure that we had something that was also kind of anonymous. So that's why we included the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute images with those. So afterwards, we will stay on Zoom, and then you guys here in person, we will have a Q&A. For those of you on Zoom, if you have questions, you can go ahead and drop those into the chat. Chloe, our great AEIVA intern, will be keeping track of those, and we'll ask them for you once we get to the Q&A session. So I am going to share my screen. We'll get started.
My name is Kamal Bamidele. This is my poem titled Come Eat, inspired by the artwork of Oljore Lutalo. Untitled. And if you got bread, see slaves captured forever in the third concrete mouth of AEIVA Art Gallery. Limited time only. Dangled on white walls, black flesh never rots. Strange fruit, but this is how it's made familiar. Welcome. Today's feast is studded with blue-eyed newcomers who wonder how they digest this. They don't eat heels. Too bad slaves don't taste sweet without sympathy. Niggas like George Jackson get hung in the back right corner, nasty when swallowed. The dragon lives inside a greener dragon here. Little brothers to his left, who's still young before pig iron wrinkles him. 6 feet from Maroon and Mamiya, who refrained but grew older, and Asada, who snipped her chains. Enjoy this, cannibals, a canvas of auction blocks, but no mothers screaming here, and the children are sold still.
No fear of intrusion. Life After Incarceration by Cindy Barnett. Inspired by Life After Life in Prison, the Bedroom Project series, looking inside portraits of women serving life sentences by Sarah Bennett. I examined the photo of Judy in the installation, reclined and content on her own bed, in her own apartment, back against the wall. Onion paper thin, brittle flowers sagging, confusing geometric square pattern table runner, a pleated lampshade resembling a skirt. I try to see what's not shown. Judy snoozing a rectangle that dangles 1 minute at a time, telling AM or PM when she snips and jerks, dripping dreams with sweat-studded brow. Maybe suffering chills of age, comforted by simple pleasures, pulling thick socks over heels, bumping the thermostat and resting on a pillow that loses shape. I imagine her looking inside a spotless mirror, skin on her neck folding into smiles like a family heirloom, agreeing with her resplendent crown, a life without elasticity. I held out my phone to capture her, my shadow blacking out her strange words. Gratitude, overjoyed, miracle. I saw my reflection in the frame, one shallow wrinkle at the corner of my eye. How similar we are and how different. Judy in a bedroom of her own after 37 years behind bars, a butterfly still pinned and matted behind glass, and my lack of understanding, her freedom from fear of intrusion.
Living Dead. The calendar flips faster than the pages of a Stephen King bestseller. It's a horror, waking up to the same bricks and blocks, steel bunks, chains, and locks. My mind screams, shakes the fences. Mule kicks the cage door. They don't budge. Couldn't care less, foundation too deep, tradition too strong. I've seen wounded minds tire, creativity spill and congeal on the way to the infirmary. Treated with indifference, we pass away in a way not quite dead, neither alive. Zombies. Shower shoes scrape and slide through the blocks, bop, throw dice, turn cards, and get high. Soulless eyes, thoughts as dark as night, visions of shooting it out in broad daylight. Not for the thrill, but so the world can feel what it is like to cope with living hopeless through oppression. In bad choices, we lost our voices, can't find our tears, our hearts boo-hoo, but nobody hears.
Hello, my name is Gabrielle Coleman. I am a senior at UAB, and I wrote a poem called Why You. This was inspired by a triptych called Untitled by Gilberto Rivera. Yet, with a tornado of nurses, a woman grabs my face with her eyes. 13 immigrants blink from panel to panel to panel of the triptych. The left eye would observe my stance, curved to the left if it could. One points her heel in my direction. The middle eye shows a girl carrying the world on her back. Another has red eyes. The right eye blinks. The children hide in their hands. Swollen lines guide me to a crinkled graph snipped from Discover magazine. Code red and code blue studded onto the page. Spicy air dangles from a gas mask. A black light thumps my temple. Am I safe outside of the canvas?
Hi, my name is Zoe and I'm an undergraduate here at UAB. Today I'm going to be reading my poem, Sitting with Mark Lohi's Pyrrhic Defeat. 4 up and 8 to the right, 3 men sit rendered in red. The other 747 men also sit in ordered rectangles, but instead take their form in graphite and hard black ink. These faces crammed together, stretching to several times my height, almost fold at the heel where the ceiling meets the wall. Contained, each man has distinct headphones, tattoos, piercings, noses, and lips their family knows them by. But like me and the cold interior of this exhibit, they can look but not touch.
Once upon a time, long, not so long ago, fed by shed and fields, toils of the deal, seed both bred and flawed. Created histories of the morrow, melodic canticle of the sorrow. To the victor goes the spoils, defeated domicile, empty hollow. Eternal source of pride, dignity defined, why confide, footprints of struggle, imprint shoes I wear. Is it easier to hide from the shame instead to face it, dare to grow? Can we put away the past, discount today of mighty woe? O error of my ways, forefathers of my days, cast shade upon my name, absorb the endless drain, bear the torrid rain, thick within the core of me, that blessed DNA, thick beyond the air between the words which we say, thick upon the consciousness and knees on which we pray, thick and hard and long ago, O struggles of today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Madison Freeman. I'm an English major with a concentration in creative writing. This piece was inspired by Connor Broderick's Be Ready for the Drop, and it is titled Naive. But this ain't no tunnel of love, see? Quite the leap from the Disney eyes that raised us, back when it was all cheeks and chimney sweepers, no breaking backs or choking below smokestacks, just squeegee clean glass and blind lights so we can cast shadows of yay or nay. This building seems sturdy enough, but is art ever safe?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Morgan Freeman. My poem is titled Beckon, and it was inspired by a piece called Daddy-O, the oldest incarcerated man in Angola Penitentiary by Chandra McCormick. But I need more than the 3/4 set in this frame. The oak's scaly flesh, a relic of your sunken skin. The swollen veins of your hands dilate like glutted roots on a soaked forest floor. Engraved lines on your leather belt remind me limbs sprawl out of view above your head. What season is it? I wish I could show you the door to my right, 4 electric letters leading you home. Artists' paper faces dangle all around us, but I am fixed on the curved letters you scribbled to your white shirt pocket. Daddy-O. If you had handpicked the outfit yourself, what color would you be? Perhaps a cobalt suit and bronze wool fedora with one feather snipped straight from a warm bird's back. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Flowers, and I'm reading the poem Habitual. Habitual, that is what you call me, as you finish your sentence casually, turning my life from living to death as long as I live, sealing me into history as another judicial fatality, blinding saviors in society until even their elect eyes consider this normality. I sit behind walls and spit at the potential nonsense you push at my common sense, making me look dense. But truth be told, I'm just a reflection of the old, caught by captivity, locked down by savagery, tempted to dance in the American economical parody. And sadly, not many seem to care that the voice of the people is being choked out by the governmental snores that only cater to their affairs. While we become victims, they reap share, but who cares? Who cares that we are looked at to be socially pitiful? So we get treated habitual. What does it matter that I'm also a human life? But because I made bad choices, you decide to treat my soul trivial. My situation is now critical. And though some may say I'm being analytical, reading too much into a thing, I say I'm just calling it like I seen it. Since the day you amended 13, and while Martin Luther had it, it's not hard to tell that we are still living the same slaved out scene, praying to get fed peaches, but only getting served the cream of a dream. But yet I see the sun rising over the horizon, it seems. Sadly, I gaze past the judicial, past the political, beyond all the trivial that tries to assault my visual, as I press for the mark to hit in society's heart, to get them to see that there is more to me than just displayed to be habitual.
In her shroud. Now I've found you, swirling in graphite fog and eraser dust. Excuse me if I cough, please. With crossed arms, I dangle empty criticisms over your glossy jumble of eye, nose, eye, mouth, snipped from fall catalogs, studded against murky gray. Peel back your eyes and lift your shroud. Push against this frame. Wear your pencil to splinters. Fill in the spaces between. Dig your heels into the slick marble floor and say more.
My name is Madison Prim. I'm a junior at UAB, and the title of my poem is called There Are More Wounds on Her Than Skin, after Tamika Cole's Open Wounds, Phil Mary Turner. His ankles are the only part of him covered in her blood, but her ankles are still knotted with twine after dangling from a tree. In the mud, she seems to fixate on something in the distance, maybe a someone, maybe a savior. She is bare, stripped of her clothes, of her child, whom he snipped from the cord erupting from her stomach. How cold was she then? Her legs studded with goosebumps, like the ones tracking my spine to the back of my neck in the cool draft in the gallery. Was he cold too? His silhouette, faceless and vacant, a shadow of death, a cigarette in his mouth, lit from a flare-up after he torched her. At the hour of her death, full of grace, our Mary.
They tell me I should vote, but why would I trust vultures and representatives of clothes? Elusive representations of metaphoric ghosts, linguists who bring language as a toast to Southern narratives, literally shifting how we view each other's literature, mocking the blind with closed eyes, lies, and rhetoric. Our past is a secret we lose to keep. The question being, will we? Or will we be left behind the wheel, death by time, extinct? They may have eyes, but they lack vision. They lack the ability to change the way they think. Symptoms of haunted narratives and untold stories, but some men judge only by the cover. Suppressed, silenced, and smothered. Their narratives and dialect adding perspective to the persuasive versions of someone's truth. Hands up, don't shoot. Truth has no version. Truth is a version unwelcome to strangers. Closed casket proof of who is truly armed and dangerous. We view Black youth as criminal, while criminals on payroll become the new acronym for COP, cops making us endangered species. Someone please speak. It might be wishful thinking. Or maybe it's all in the language. Black lives matter, but only in death are we famous.
The trauma of translucence. Engulfed in welded wire, an indigo sheet entraps translucence. Black turns white, a one-winged phoenix limping from the ash of dirty laundry, but failing to rise above the photo of a little girl, stumbling through the blue interior of an eggshell van, finding her honey curls dripping onto salmon corduroy. A van is a weapon, if utilized in crimes against nature. A tennis racket, also a weapon, utilized in crimes against a woman. My mother was a tennis ball. My father swung a racket like a pro. The downy yellow replacing the soft soil of her frizz, the strings tight enough to fracture the shaft on impact. Look up, say nothing about what dangles from a line. You with your missing teeth must chew what he can't. Swallow steel-toed soft belly. Digest baby brother throwing his tennis ball against the wall. The downy yellow replaced by the dark soil of your frizz. Crumbled like last week's laundry on the floor, you remember where you have seen the indigo before.
Hi, I'm Anna Elizabeth Ulrey, and I'm an undergrad here at UAB. This is Polls after James Yahya Huff's Untitled. And the untrimmed white of your nail punctured the apricot, breaking velvety skin to expose a sheen of juicy flesh. Your pimple-studded forehead, a pachinko board of sweat that splashed onto the dangling oval sticker, tickling the barcode of Conrad and Adams Fruit LLC. Now, 19 years later, midway through my shift in this museum, an artist replaces my memory with a barcode, and I believe him. Beside the exit door, the fire alarm traps my eyes in a red hole I can't escape, like the other faces in the collage, caught inside their barcodes that any scanner could trace. Thank you.
All right, so let me get this back to our Zoom. Oops. Okay, I'm back, right? I forgot to stop the screen share. Okay, so welcome back. We are now going to shift to question and answering, and also thank you to all of our readers, both from the BCRI and then also here for the English department. That's also a very brave thing for them to do. It's very scary, particularly if it's your first time doing public speaking, even though it is even videos. So just want to thank you all for your bravery in doing this. So for those of you on the Zoom, please make sure that you're dropping your questions into the chat. And Chloe, who is up here, she will be asking those questions for you, and we will be putting the speakers from the BCRI up on the screen as well, so they can answer questions as well if needed. And if there's anything about the blog specifically, Joy is here and she'll be able to answer those questions. So I'm going to start us off while we wait for, and then for you guys in person, sorry, I forgot that instructions. Just raise your hand. please, I will call on you, ask the question then, and then I will repeat it for the people in the Zoom as well. So please ask questions as well. But I'm going to start us off with a question. So for all of you, the English students that are here, and then if there's any online, would anyone like to speak to what the experience was like creating poetry based on artwork? And is this an experience you would like to repeat? Or do you feel like in creating these poems, it helped you connect with the artwork in a way you might not have before? And I forgot to say, for those of you here, when you go to answer, I'm going to have to ask you to come up here so that way people can see you. So get your steps in for the night. So does anybody want to start us off? Great, come on up.
Let's see. Hello, everyone. Hello to everyone on Zoom. It was an honor to get to read to y'all today. It really, it brings, simply looking at a picture on a wall, you know, you can walk right by it, you can take what you will with you, but when you sit with and try to write about the piece, and you try to not only provide an experience of viewing the piece, but also touch on other issues that the piece might not be, you know, directly touching on. I grew a lot personally as a writer just because I've written many poems, but it's a whole, you can look at your own work and you might think you're accomplishing something that you're really just not. And going back and revising these poems has been an amazing experience. And it's from a rough draft to the final draft, it's incredible how far and how it's just a completely different product by the end of joining your talk, showing it to your peers and editing it together. But thank you again. It was an honor to get to read with y'all, and I will pass it back to Christina.
Thank you. Wonderful answer. Does anybody else want to share? Yeah, come on up.
I'm good. Okay. Hi, everyone, in person and on Zoom. I'm Cheyenne Hollowell. I'm a junior at UAB, a creative writing major. I did the poem entitled In Her Shroud. I honestly thought it was a really great experience. My first Ecrastic piece I did actually last year during an online class during COVID times. It was terrible, but it's definitely just a really good experience. When you're really intentionally like connecting with the piece, like this is the first one in the exhibit, the one that I did, it just immediately caught my eye. The sense of fragmentation of your identity that you experience being incarcerated, being in prison where you're given a number and you're sort of stripped of who you are is something I've never experienced. And so getting to see just a glimpse of that in her painting was just really moving. And as a white woman going into a mass incarceration exhibit, there's always the conversation of race happening. And I feel really grateful to have been a part of that conversation and gotten to interact with that piece, knowing that this person has gone through something that I will never get to experience. Thankfully, not have to experience that. But just seeing her perspective as an incarcerated Black woman. In earlier revisions, I talked about the sense of I'm allowed to be angry as a white person and not be labeled as the angry Black woman. And I feel like that's something that a lot of Black women have to deal with, including Miss Tamika Cole, who did the piece. And so that's just something that really frustrated me as I was looking at this piece. And it's something that I don't think about a lot. And so getting to be involved in these conversations was just really valuable in my experience. And as your question, I would love to do this again. This was a great experience as a writer and just as a human being who shares the earth with all of you lovely people. So yeah, it was a great experience. So thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to add, we did have a question in the chat that I feel like kind of goes with what we're talking about now. So it's asking, with this assignment, did it turn out to be more fun than you thought, or was it harder? So I guess that's kind of more for the English class students. But yeah, that's just something to think about when you answer.
Does anyone want to add to that then? And whether it was fun? Okay, come on up.
The funnest part, sorry, y'all. The funnest part for me personally is, you know, when you're just sitting with yourself, you can write whatever you want. But in these classes, our professors are placing specific restrictions on us. And in the beginning, it can sometimes seem like an absolutely impossible task. But I know from personal experience, some of the best writing that I've done is a result of someone else saying, you can't do this, or you can't do this, or you must do this. You know, placing those limitations on yourself as a writer, it inspires some of the greatest writing, in my opinion. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak to that one? Was it fun? Was it, okay, everybody's nodding their heads, or at least 4 or 5 people are nodding their heads that it was fun to do. Okay, so I also want to ask a similar question. I know we've got Jasmine here who's joining us from the JCMP BCRI group. So maybe we start with you, and if anyone else is on for you guys, what was this experience like and I'm looking up here because you're actually up here. So what was this experience like for you? And why did you, I know we gave suggestions. So why did you volunteer? And then why did you decide to do the poem that you did? And what was the experience like?
Sure, yeah. I was really honored when Miss Michelle reached out to me about this opportunity and being able to hear about it, because I just have connections to all the groups. So I know some people who are involved with JCMP, also being an alumni of the Legacy Youth Program at BCRI. And also I briefly took some graduate classes at UAB, and my professor was Adam Vine. So I was like, sure, it seems like the perfect opportunity to do something with all three. And also just because it's such a powerful exhibit as well, with the artwork that y'all have there, and also reading the poetry from these people who are incarcerated, and also seeing that all the poems were anonymous, and then obviously hearing the reasons why. It's a very like powerful statements that such great art is being created, but like we also can't pay proper tribute to the poets because of, you know, they're still involved in the legal system, and that we wouldn't want them to be harshly punished because of anything that they wrote. And it's like, wow. And but we're able to speak it for them because we're allowed those freedoms. And from the poems that you all suggested for us to read that might fit well with the program, I really chose habitual because I just think I like the sound of the word. A lot of times, you know, as poets, sometimes certain words just stick with you because of the sound of them, but also because of the content of the poem. It reminds me a lot about, you know, especially coming from a Christian background, thinking about like the nature of sin and forgiveness. But in the case for a lot of people who are incarcerated, it's kind of like once they commit a certain crime and have to spend time in prison, they're marked for life. They're considered like habitual offenders or just like criminal overall. And like when he's talking about, you know, it doesn't matter that I'm a human life. Like this is still a person, but we're not affording them the same type of like benefit of the doubt or treatment as we would for someone who hasn't been incarcerated. Who, you know, there are people who have committed those same crimes or even things much worse, but they're not incarcerated. But because they're not in prison, they're still afforded a lot of those freedoms to walk around, to change themselves, to be viewed more positively, whereas these people who do find themselves incarcerated are not. So it's a great privilege to be able to read this poem in the place of the actual poet who cannot exhibit that freedom to, you know, speak his words freely. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions here in the room? Oh, all right. Well, oh, yes. Yeah.
So what is the process like going from a piece of artwork to actually writing a poem about that and getting finished?
Okay, so the question is, what is that process like going from picking the artwork and then creating the poem and then reading it? So that would be for you guys in here. Does anybody want to speak to that? All right, come on up.
Hello, everyone. So this is probably one of the most difficult pieces I've ever had to write. Not just based off of the stipulations that Professor Vines gave us, but also the magnitude of what we were actually writing about. So when we first came to the exhibit to see the art, I probably walked around the exhibit 15 times and just kept coming back to the same piece that I ended up writing about. And took several notes, several pages worth of notes, just little snippets of what I thought I could do with it. And by the end of it, I probably didn't use any of those things. You know, after revisions and talking with Professor Vines and coming back to the exhibit again, your perception changes on what your goal is, what you're trying to say with the piece. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And I do want to speak to that too. I've heard that I've done over 40 tours for students here at UAB. And by that nature, there are several students that ended up coming back 2-3 times because they're in multiple classes that come. And that is something that I've heard is each time you come back, you get something different. You leave with a different word. So at the end of all my tours, I ask, what is one word that is coming to your mind right now after having seen that exhibition? And it always changes, which I think is really interesting. So for those of you on Zoom and in person, if you haven't booked a time to come, maybe book 2 times to come see it. So does anybody else want to talk about that process? Yeah, come on up.
I just want to add, y'all are getting a lot of praise in the chat for those of y'all that are in person. So pat yourself on the back.
Hi, everyone. This is nerve-wracking. My name is Madison. The process was liberating, but also kind of scary. It's actually a lot harder to look at someone else's artwork and try to find the right words to describe it while also adding your own thoughts and emotions into it. Context on the art is what helped me the most. I did my poem on Open Wounds, Phil Mary Turner by Tamika Cole. And I read a little bit about Mary Turner. And in 1918, in Georgia, there was a plantation owner that was murdered. And this in turn set off a bunch of lynchings of slaves by whites in retaliation. And Mary Turner was among those slaves because she protested against her husband being lynched. And they lynched her, they tortured her, they burned her, and she was pregnant also at the time. So just reading that really, it made me angry, and it was heartbroken. I was heartbroken reading it, but it also inspired me. It also inspired me to write the poem that I wrote. And so that knowing the context of why someone created something really helped me write my poem. So it was, like I said, it was a liberating experience. So yeah. Thanks.
All right. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak to that? Or to one of the other questions that we've gotten? Okay, come on up.
Might be a little short for this. Hello everyone, I'm Zoe. I wrote the poem about Mark Lowy's piece, Pyrrhic Defeat. I was drawn to it because it was really the first really huge work in the exhibit. There was quite a few works in the exhibit which were would take up the whole space and you felt very overwhelmed by them. So I chose it because I was able, when I was looking at it, I kind of broke it down mentally, and I wrote about the couple pieces in there which were made in a different color, which I thought was really cool and interesting, because that was all that the artist might have had available to him at the time, was a pen of a different color. So that was kind of my creative process, was just trying to hone in on something that I will probably never have an experience of, and trying to relate in this really minuscule way to him, and write a poem that was hopefully meaningful and respectful to what he had to go through. So that was where I came from. I really enjoyed doing it, but I love writing poetry in general, so I'm happy to write about anything.
You're in the perfect class. Thanks. Well, in the meantime, was there another question from in here? Not, I have another one. I'm full of questions. So Joy, would you mind telling us a little bit more about the blog? And when we were talking through it, I asked you for the suggestions that we sent to the BCRI students. And so can you tell us a little bit more about it and then why you picked those particular poems? And I know we some of the students actually strayed away and did different ones, but what was a little bit more about that? Yeah.
So a little bit about the poetry and the artwork on the blog. I think sometimes we forget about that, the population that's incarcerated is experiencing current events and life as we know it the same as us. And we're not hearing that perspective. We're not hearing those voices. And so, I picked selections from our blog that tied in well with the artwork in Marking Time and some of the subject matter that was highlighted there. However, I will also say you'll notice even from many of the pieces in Marking Time, you can see current events reflected in that artwork. It is not what someone might traditionally think of or expect artwork to look like from those incarcerated. I think many might think the subject matter would solely be on the experience of being incarcerated. And so while we wanted to focus on poems that did tie well to the exhibition, I would encourage everyone to read the blog because it's so interesting to hear that perspective on, particularly, it was really interesting to read the poetry that was coming out of Donaldson during 2020, with the events that occurred during spring of 2020. And so that's a little bit about, why those selections were chosen. I want to give a huge kudos to all of the BCRI legacy students and you all here with us tonight, but particularly the legacy students. I have a close relationship with them. I used to work at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, but this was my first time hearing our poetry read aloud versus me just reading it myself. And you guys just really brought it to life in a way that it hasn't been brought to life before. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent, Christina, but I just wanted to thank you all. This was a really unique experience. And one thing I did also want to add, two things. I want to acknowledge our amazing volunteer, Connie Kohler, in the audience. None of this would be possible without her and her work with those at Donaldson. Yeah, we can clap. Absolutely, we can clap. And I also want to share that thankfully, because of AEIVA, this is being recorded tonight and we will be able to upload it onto a thumb drive and send it into Donaldson. So those poets that wrote this poetry will be able to hear their work actually performed, and that it means so much. It means more than you could even imagine. So thank you all for that.
Chloe, was there any more questions in the chat?
So we just have one last question. It's how has seeing the artwork and writing about it made a direct impact on your life? So I think this really applies to all of our poets.
Anyone like to take a stab at it? Okay, come on up.
I'm back. I found that the most important topics are often not talked about. I mean, I come from a very passive aggressive family. And a lot of the times that, some of the best writing and some of the best artwork, it's conveying a message that it cannot be conveyed any other way. I mean, they either don't have the time or the relationship or the will to sit down and work through the issues that we're working through with these paintings, with these poems. So I've just gained a whole new appreciation on artwork in general. But I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Anybody else want to add? Yeah, come on up.
I think something that's like specific to this assignment and this exhibit is that a lot of the things that we talk about in school, especially regarding race, is talked about like it was so long ago. Yet these are things that are happening right now in our world today. It is still very real. It is impacting real people with families who are human beings just like the rest of us. And it, like, I know especially they had the one video of the woman who was in labor, strapped down for I think 46 hours while giving birth, and no one should be treated like that ever. I don't care what they've done, you know. I know that a lot of women who had their pictures photographed in the first home that they had after incarceration, they were given near life sentences, and just seeing them like in their space with their items was really impactful. And so this assignment really just allowed me to access that emotion and be vulnerable with these people who are showing immense vulnerability in sharing what they're sharing. It really impacted me to know that like these are things that are happening now, and these injustices continue on, and you're not always aware of that walking around, you know, and you're not always aware of what's happening behind closed doors with people who are hungry for power, or you know, just abusing their power essentially. And so that was just really mind-blowing for me in this assignment. So thank you. What else? Yeah.
I'll just add while she's coming up, we did get a compliment for Miss Joy. They complimented how she spoke about the impact of hearing poems read aloud. So I just wanted to convey that.
So I would like to begin by saying that all of the experiences I have had in my life with the prison system have been saturated in white privilege, and that I will never ever begin to fathom the experience that Black individuals have in the court system, justice system, etc. But I, unlike some people, have had a great deal of experience I have had, you know, family members in and out of the prison system. I have dealt with court hearings. I have had injustices. I am familiar with how it works, and it is something that I do deal with and have to process in my everyday life. And I think that being in an exhibit where I wrote my piece on No Spirit for Me by Rowan Renee, and they wanted to exhibit how injustices, even when a court case is solved and resolved, how it's not, and there is never really a sense of justice for not only the people in these systems, but also for the families of the people in the systems. And being able to see artwork from people with different experiences and backgrounds from mine was something that was very eye-opening, but also being able to sit under the art of someone who has gone through something similar to what I have gone through, and be immersed in that experience and look up and see what they have seen and written, and have someone's entire, you know, dirty laundry just subject to looking at people was very, very difficult. And we were talking earlier about if it was hard or if it was fun. I personally did not think that it was fun. I thought that it was a very necessary experience, but it caused a lot of things to be processed. And I think that it is something that we will be dealing with every day in society, and that it's extremely necessary for people to see and experience these things so that they can think about it every day of their life, because we have the benefit of not being incarcerated, not constantly being subjected to these issues, but these people don't have that. And it was something that was extremely difficult and very, very cathartic and very, very necessary. But I do think that it is something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life.
Thank you. Any last questions or comments? Yes. Sorry, you're hidden by my computer, so I didn't see you before. I apologize. Oh, the question before was, Chloe, what was that? That one came from you, I think.
The one I just asked?
The one before you were talking about joy.
Let's see. Oh, yes. How has seeing the artwork and writing about it made a direct impact on your life?
Let's see.
Hello, my name is Kamal Bamidele. I was the author of Come Eat, which was inspired by the artwork of Ojuru Lutalo. And I guess how the artwork impacted me, how this exhibit impacted me, is an interesting question because originally I was never going to come to this exhibit and see this artwork. And it's because in my mind, I envisioned that the sort of artwork that's on display and typical of the sort of art that's articulated around Black people is always steeped and centered around Black death and the violation of Black flesh because white society has this odd fascination with keeping Black flesh perpetually violated and observing it. And that's the dominant form that Black art takes, and that's the art that's funded. So, and when I came here, that's also what I observed. So, when choosing my piece, I wasn't really drawn to write about anything specific until I saw kind of the collage, which was at the very beginning, which featured like many political prisoners who were captured in the cause of Black liberation. There was George Jackson, Assata Shakur, Sundiata Acoli, many others. And it was a sight because if you know anything about these POWs, these revolutionaries, you know they were anti-capitalist. They were anti the commodification of things, and it was interesting to see that they were in this exhibit and they were being commodified and distributed and consumed. And so it inspired me to kind of write a piece that made the observers of the art the subject rather than the art itself, because I object to people projecting their own feelings and thoughts and emotions onto any prisoners, but specifically political prisoners, because these people, we know these people's thoughts because they wrote about it. And so in writing my piece, I embedded many contradictions to sort of give the reader of my piece the feeling of being contradicted and of being under critique and under scrutiny, because I think you should be, because I don't really buy coming into this exhibit and looking at these slaves. Really, the prison system is slavery. I don't really buy coming in here and looking at this artwork and feeling bad or sympathetic, or like you imagine a world with better conditions for these people, because history shows us, and it's specifically funny with people like Assata Shakur or others who were part of like the Black Liberation Army and things, who would go into prisons and liberate people. I don't really buy that you care about the liberation of prisoners, because if we were to go get our guns now and go open Donaldson or go open Etowah, you would be afraid and you would be frightened, and you would signal your police to go murder more Black people. You would signal them to bring Africans back into the penitentiary, and you would applaud them for doing so. But then you come in here and it's like, wow, people get incarcerated. That's messed up. So I objected to kind of in my mind imagining that was what was going to happen. And so I wanted to write a piece that made you feel that, which is why my tone was very rushed and agitated. And as far as direct impact it made on my life, it didn't really change my life because I'm a person who was already, I'm a poet. This is my first poem. So like I already wrote poetry. And as far as like knowing these figures and knowing their stories, I've studied about them before, so I know who they were. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Jordan Croft, one of our one of the BCRI legacy alumni, said that they thought his piece was honest and clear and don't censor your truth ever. So it's a pretty good little compliment.
Thank you. Thank you. Did anybody else want to share as well as we, because we are getting close to our end of time. No, was there any last questions as well? Great. Okay, well, thank you so much for everyone for sharing and participating in this, and for those of you coming on Zoom and in person to see this and be part of this discussion. We thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night. Thank you.